guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kathleen, and today's video is going to be my May wrap-up. And in the month of May, I had an amazing reading month, probably my best reading month ever. I actually managed to read a total of 8 books, and I don't even know how I did it. I went on vacation, and despite the fact that I had a really busy vacation seeing all my family, I actually managed to get a lot of reading done during my vacation, and I'm honestly so proud of myself. I hope that I can keep up this streak. But let's go ahead and get started into the 8 books that I read this month. Alright, so the first book that I read during the month of May was Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. I actually read this book before many years ago, but I loved this book back then. I gave it 4 stars back then, and this is a book that I feel like has gotten a lot of mixed to negative reviews. A lot of people didn't like the book, but personally I really did. And because the movie came out earlier this year, I think it came out in March, I wanted to reread this book to watch the movie. I wanted to make sure that the book was still fresh in my mind when I saw the movie, and just like when I first read it, I really loved this book. In case you don't know what Before I Fall is about, it's about this popular girl, and she goes to a party with her friends, and at the end of the night when she and her friends are headed home, they are in this terrible accident, and Sam ends up dying on that accident. And then you think the story ends there, but no, she ends up waking up the next day and realizing that it's the same day of her accident, and she ends up repeating that same day 7 times. So she has to figure out how to break that cycle. And so during that 7 times that she repeats the same day, in my personal opinion, she went through a tremendous character growth, and I really loved her by the end of this book. And during my second time reading it, I gave it 4 stars again. Alright, and then so the next book that I read during the month of May is The Traitor's Kiss by Erin Beatty. I received a copy of this book from the publisher in exchange for an honest review. But this is about a girl who is sent by her family to see a matchmaker in order to see if she could make a potential bride for this party that is coming up in a few weeks, where brides will meet potential husbands. And our main character does not want to get married, so she butchers the interview. But because the matchmaker ends up liking our main character, she hires her as her apprentice in order to spy on the soldiers that will be escorting them to this party. I liked this book. I thought it was interesting. I did give it 3.5 stars out of 5. However, you should know, in case you're interested in reading this book, that there is a lot of controversy surrounding this book. The author uses the dark-skinned aggressor trope, which is something that I was very uncomfortable with. She also describes skin tones in a very uncomfortable manner. There is a scene where the enemy, or dark-skinned aggressors, are described as being so dark that they blend into the shadows. So I just felt like the author described skin tones in a very uncomfortable and potentially harmful way. Also, I heard that this book was supposed to be a Mulan retelling, that initially the publisher was advertising this as a Mulan retelling. To be honest, there is nothing similar between this book and Mulan, other than the fact that our main character was forced by her family to see a matchmaker. That is the only thing that I saw that is similar between the 2 stories. But if this is supposed to be a Mulan retelling, then I completely understand why people were upset with this book, because the main character is white. So if you are interested in reading this book, be aware of these issues. Also, the book was a little slow in the beginning because they are traveling a lot of the time, but otherwise I thought the plot was interesting. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. And then the next book that I read during the month of May was Cress by Marissa Meyer. This is the 3rd book in the Lunar Chronicles series, and I absolutely loved it. Besides Cinder and Scarlet that are also in this book, we are introduced to a whole new character named Cress, and I really liked Cress. She has this huge crush on Captain Thorne, and she is just so adorable in her crush. I feel like she's almost me when I'm fangirl crushing on a celebrity or kind of thing, and I just really enjoyed this book. There were some revelations in this book that I was just like, wow, that is so awesome. A lot of people said that this is actually their favorite book in the series, but to be honest, despite the fact that I enjoyed this book immensely, I gave it 5 stars. I think, to be honest, I liked Scarlet more, but not by much. And I cannot wait to get into the final book of this series and see how it all ends. And the next book that I read was probably my favorite book that I read so far this year. Not just this month, but this year. I am quite surprised at how much I ended up loving this book, and it is An Amber in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. The only reason why I ended up picking up this book is because I buddy read this book with Chloe from the Brunette Bibliophile, and she had to read this book this month, and so that is the only reason I picked up this book. This series is a fantasy novel, and it follows two characters. This has dual perspectives. One of the characters is Leia, and she is a slave in this world, and the second character is Elias, and he's a soldier for the army, for the Crown's army, and they kind of meet each other because she is a slave to the commander of the army, but the commander is Elias's mother. So it's amazing. I love the story so much, but particularly I love the characters. Elias especially, I connected with him so much because he's a soldier, but he doesn't want to be. He's actually was planning on deserting the army, even though he is the best soldier in the army. And as soon as I finished reading this book, I went and bought the second book. It's just so good, and honestly, as I said, it took me by surprise at how much I love this series. I can see why this book got a lot of hype. I can see why a lot of people love this. And then the next book that I read during the month of May was, of course, A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the ACOTAR series, and this is the final book in the first trilogy because it is 6 books. There is the first trilogy, and then there will be 3 more books. I really love this book, but I did not love it more than I loved Akhmov. A Court of Missing Fury was one of my favorite books of 2016. That book was perfection. I loved every single part of A Court of Missing Fury. And while I really did love this book, I didn't like it as much as I liked A Court of Missing Fury. I gave this book 4.5 stars out of 5. I loved how it ended. I loved that it kind of had a lot of closure for a lot of things. It did leave some things open, some open-ended questions that I'm assuming we'll see on the second trilogy of the series. We finally confront the King of Hybern, and as usual, Feyre is continuing to kick ass. I did think this book was a bit too long, to be honest. This is 700 pages, and this book I kind of honestly almost had to force myself to read because it was so long, and there is just a lot of plotting here and there, but not a lot of action, I don't think. And I just wanted the book to just get on with it. But regardless, I really love this book. Alright, and so the next book that I read was My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. I actually listened to the audiobook for this book, and I have to say I loved it. The narrator for the audiobook is brilliant. This book is a historical fiction with comical twists. The narrator really nailed the comedy aspects of this book down pat. This is the story of Lady Jane Grey, who was very much a real person in history. She was the Queen of England for 9 days after King Edward died. His sister Mary was supposed to be the next one in line. She raised an army, took Lady Jane Grey out of the throne, and accused her of treason, and because of that, Lady Jane Grey was beheaded. I loved so much this book, so good. I gave it 5 stars. If you're looking for a good book for laughs, highly recommend this book. Even if you're not interested in historical fiction, still read this book because it is so good and so funny. I just highly recommend it. You won't regret reading this book because it is gonna crack you up. And then the next book that I finished reading during the month of May is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. This is book 3 in the Mortal Instrument series, and I really enjoyed it. I heard that this was supposed to be like the end of the trilogy before Cassandra Clare decided to expand the story, and I can see how, because it ended on a nice note. Everything had a nice closure to it, and like the end of a chapter kind of thing. I really liked this book, especially the ending. The ending was amazing. It was so cool. But I have to say, I did give this book 4 stars, and the reason why I knocked off a star is because of Clary. I'm sorry, but I felt like Clary was just so incredibly annoying, and I thought that she was so incredibly selfish in some of her decisions, especially in the first half of the book. I wanted to slap the hell out of this girl. She made irrational decisions based on emotion, and she just didn't think about the consequences, and especially she didn't think of how those consequences would affect the people that she loves. She just thought about herself. I really am trying hard not to hate Clary. I'm still like in the air about her because I just can't stand her sometimes, and then other times I really love her. But I really loved this book. The ending was so incredible. I was like, oh my god, it was so awesome. Honestly, I cannot wait to get into the next book. I want to see how Cassandra Clare is gonna take this world in the next 3 books, because it's just such an interesting world. And finally, the last book that I read during the month of May is Fairest by Marissa Meyer. This is a short novella based on Levana's story from the Lunar Chronicles, and this is just basically telling us how Levana became to be who she is in the stories of the Lunar Chronicles. And I have to say, I hated myself, but I felt so bad for Levana. I actually felt sympathy for her, and I really didn't want to. I finally got to understand why she is the way she is in the Lunar Chronicles series, and I didn't want to. I wanted to continue to hate her as much as I did before, but I really loved the story. It just gave me a glimpse into who Levana really is and why she is the way she is. This book is not long at all. It's only about 220 pages, so I was able to read this in 2 days. Elizabeth from the Hourly was the one who told me to read this book before reading Winter, because it will give you a lot of insight on Levana and also on Princess Winter, who does make an appearance in this book, because the last book is obviously based on Princess Winter. And if you haven't read Fairest and you read the Lunar Chronicles, I would highly recommend it, because it will honestly give you a lot of insight on Levana. Anyway guys, those are all of the books that I managed to read during the month of May. I cannot believe I managed to read this many books. My TBR video is coming up in just a few days. It is my next video that is coming up. I couldn't fit it into this video because this video would just be way too long. Anyway guys, let me know down in the comments below which books you have read this month, and if you had a great reading month like I did, because I would really love to know. Anyway guys, thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like if you did, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. All of my social medias are linked down below, including Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads if you like to follow me. I hope to see you guys on my next video. Have a good day guys, and keep reading. Bye!